Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Lawyers. Today we're going to ask the lawyer about bankruptcy, and more specifically, how do you know which bankruptcy is the right one for you? And we are lucky today that we have here to answer our questions attorney David Shuster of the Shuster Law Firm in the Dallas, Texas area. David, thank you for taking some time to join us and answer our questions today. I appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Rob. I'm happy to do so.
So when clients come to see you, do they typically know which type of bankruptcy is going to be best for them, or are they counting on you to help them there?
It's funny, it's, with consumer bankruptcies, it's Chapter 7 or 13, so it is 50% chance either way. A lot of times they do think they know. Oftentimes they are right. So it just differs. The important thing is that for any potential client or person facing any kind of difficult financial circumstance to not feel like they need to go out on their own and do a bunch of research and put themselves in one chapter or the other, because it's pretty easy to figure out after a short phone call which way to go. And
then there's a pretty good chance you're going to know better than they will about that sort of thing. You've kind of you've done some research here. So let's just basically, who's eligible for Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13?
Well, you can actually file both, and someone would be eligible for both very often. The main difference, Rob, is the means test. I mean, if you make too much money and you have, if the law says rather that you make too much money, and you may not feel that way as most, but if the law says that you have disposable income, too much household income to get a Chapter 7 discharge without paying any creditors back, then you're not eligible for a 7, and you have to file a 13 to pay back maybe not all of the debt, but the portion of the debt for which you are legally responsible to pay, right? So if you don't qualify for the Chapter 7 because you make too much money, don't pass the means test, then you can do a Chapter 13 and really still get a discharge, but pay back that amount of what the law calls your legal monthly disposable income first.
Okay. And so what are the benefits of 7 over 13?
Well, the Chapter 7, I do always say, is the best get out of debt plan. If you can qualify for it and you're not going to lose any property, it's a 90-day case, give or take, where you get a fresh start very quickly. You can rebuild your credit very quickly and really just move forward quickly. So the only reason why you would do a 13 is if you don't qualify for the Chapter 7, or maybe you have some property that's not exempt that you might lose, or you are trying to get caught up with a creditor and you have to file a 13 in order to repay that creditor. Because a 7, you're not repaying creditors. You just file, say you don't have any legal monthly disposable income, and you discharge your debts. Whereas a 13, you're paying somebody.
Mm-hmm. Are there some types of debts that would be covered under 13 that aren't covered under 7?
Well, no, the debts would apply to both, Rob. It would just be the biggest example is if you have a car or mortgage payment that is behind. Okay. And so in a Chapter 7, again, you're not repaying creditors in a Chapter 7. So in Chapter 13, that's when you're making those payments. And so that debt, that car loan, that mortgage loan in a Chapter 7 is just there. You're paying it directly, whether you're late or not. Whereas in a Chapter 13, you can take those missed payments, whether you're 1 month behind or a year behind, and begin to repay those over an extended period of time when those creditors are refusing to give you a deal on their own.
So is that basically the benefit of 13 over 7, the means test and the property?
The benefit of 13 over 7 is primarily that you can reorganize. It is a consumer reorganization where the benefits are that you don't have to, if you were out of work for 6 months, okay, and you're fearing that you're going to have your car repossessed or your home up for foreclosure, then the benefit of the 13 comes in, where it allows you to still discharge your unsecured debt, maybe if your income's not too high, but it allows you to focus on repaying those secured creditors so you don't lose your property.
And you mentioned that Chapter 7 cases can move very quickly, 90 days. How long might a 13 take?
It's 3 to 5 years. And so, the plans are a minimum of 3 years, maximum of 5. And so, that's definitely a consideration when you have someone that has Let's say they have certain debts that have to be repaid, child support and tax debt, and maybe they're late on their mortgage as well for whatever reason. You got to divide that total by 60 and make sure you're able to make those payments once you file your case.
And you said you can actually file for both. Can you convert from one to the other?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you can convert from a Chapter 7 to a 13 or vice versa. The more common thing is to convert from a 13 to a 7. And that would be if God forbid, you're in a Chapter 13 trying to repay the mortgage company because you were late when you lost your job. And then, God forbid, you lose your job again. Then you can convert to a 7 because you don't have the ability to make those payments anymore, and at least wipe the slate clean, right? There's many reasons why you would want to convert to a 7, but yeah, I mean, essentially, if you filed a Chapter 13, your circumstances change. You can not pay another filing fee, convert over to a Chapter 7, and then you're looking at like a less than 90-day time period, really, before you just wipe the slate clean.
Now, in doing the conversion, it's still the kind of thing you'd want to come back and see an attorney like yourself to take care of that?
Well, certainly. So if you're in a Chapter 13, your existing Chapter 13 attorney is going to handle the conversion unless there's some sort of problem with your attorney. You can certainly change attorneys. And now, if you're going, and the same thing, if you're going from a 7 to a 13, Chapter 7 to a 13 is a little less common. It could be that, again, change of circumstance. You file the Chapter 7 because your income is way down, and then you get that job you've been looking for a year, and suddenly you are able to repay creditors. Well, then you can convert to a Chapter 13 and save your property. Also, it could be a defensive maneuver. If we file a Chapter 7 and the trustee has a problem making an argument that you do have disposable income. Doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And the nice sort of defensive maneuver is to then convert to the 13 and say, okay, since there is some disposable income, we'll go that route and repay what the law requires us to repay rather than just throw our hands up.
We've talked in the past about student loan debt. Does it tend to fall under one or the other, or could it be either one?
The student loan debt essentially is an unsecured creditor that is not subject to the discharge, okay? And while there are exceptions to that rule, I mean, by and large in the jurisdiction here, in a lot of jurisdictions, the exceptions are difficult to meet. And so therefore, the student loans are just kind of in this category of being subject to the automatic stay in bankruptcy. So if you have a student loan creditor coming after you, or your payment is due next month and you file bankruptcy, they're a creditor, they get notified, and essentially you buy yourself some time with it. The student loans are just something that are going to be there when the bankruptcy is done, whether it's a 7 or a 13. And with that balance that's potentially not paid in a Chapter 13.
So is there a quick rule of thumb that you can give people of how they might know whether they should file 7 or 13, or do they just talk to you and let you help them make that decision?
The best thing to do is to talk to an attorney. Also if you feel like that you make too much money because of something you read on the internet, or back to your question about do people know which chapter to file? I mean, I just talked to a guy yesterday, Robin. He said, well, I talked to my friend at work where I work, and he says I need to do a Chapter 7. And so he was pretty set that that's what he needed to do. And so it's funny, when you read something or you hear something and you know which direction you need to go, that's fine. But don't put yourself in a box. Definitely talk to an attorney, and for that matter, you might talk to more than one attorney too if you are second guessing what you're hearing. I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out which way to go. Primary distinction being, if you're not late on a secured debt, you don't really need to repay a creditor, IRS, child support, etc. You just need to get a fresh start and get rid of all that credit card debt. Well, then, Chapter 7 is what we're going to shoot for.
Great. Well, David, thank you so much for your time again and answering our questions. I sure do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, Rob.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyers. Thank you to our guest, attorney David Shuster of the Shuster Law Firm in the Dallas, Texas area. Please take a second to click on the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen so you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and know when we have any future episodes of Ask the Lawyers. And if you want more information about bankruptcy, visit askthelawyer.com, or you can choose a lawyer that lawyers choose. And if you want to contact David Shuster, you can call the phone number on the screen. I'm Rob Rosenthal for AskTheLawyers.com.